Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. You've been told that you got to be clear on what you want. You got to be clear on your business. You got to be clear on your value prop. And I'm sitting here, I'm looking at you, and I'm telling you, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. But do I have the guest for you, my amazing friend, Melissa Davis? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So tell me, how did Melissa Davis become Melissa Davis? What was your professional journey to the work that you're doing today, and what were some fun pit stops along the way?
Yeah, well, I have an incredibly varied past, but I think, the real impetus for where I am right now in my career is frustration, which I think is probably pretty common with most of your entrepreneurial friends. So, I really moved around from finance to HR to marketing and ultimately into my own business. But the common thread, I think, was really starting to notice what the drivers were in an organization, behind the people in the organization. In my perspective, my earlier perspective was from the organizational level, right? Like, what are the reasons that we all kind of stay here together in this organization? And so the early part of my endeavor on my own was focused more in that internal space and that organizational space. And as an entrepreneur, I realized quickly that, I was selling up a tree that no one was very much interested in exploring. It was incredible, and that was incredibly frustrating as an entrepreneur as well. So, there was frustration inside an organization where they had no desire to understand the values that drove the people and the organization forward, and capitalizing on that and really connecting into it. And then as an entrepreneur, it wasn't much different, right? You can talk to the HR department, you can talk to employees all day long who are all on board and get it. But, there's investors, there's deadlines, there, are milestones to reach. And at a certain point, an organization, I just learned very quickly that selling up doesn't work. And so I really had to sit down and say, why am I not flipping the values work that I've really been going deep into onto myself? And so that's really where my work began to really take off, in this understanding of what I do and who I serve and why I do it can be found in the tangible evidence of my values in my life. So that's really how that kind of zigzagged, experience in all of these different places, and then within an organization in the study of values, kind of took off for me into supporting entrepreneurship.
And you bring up such an important point. It's subtle, but it is vitally important. I'm going to paraphrase it, then I'd love you to kind of dig further into it and unpack how you help entrepreneurs get this kind of clarity. You mentioned there are big, pervasive problems. There are problems that a lot of people complain about, but they have no interest and no commitment to solve them. So this is like, well, what do most people complain about? You can say, well, people complain about the weather, but no one's going to spend money to try and fix it. It's like, I don't like rainy days. I really like sunny days, partly sunny, ideally 75 degrees. Here's $1 million. Could you please make sure I only have sunny days that are 75 degrees? So the listening campaign, if you will, you see a problem, you verify the problem, but the frustration comes when you come to the realization, and you came to it sooner than most. Wait a minute.
Didn't feel soon, but yeah.
Oh, well, exactly. Well, some people literally spend a decade, then they go, I'm barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
But so what's the difference between a big problem, a serious problem? I'm sorry, not a big and serious are the same. A common problem, a big problem, and then a problem people are willing to spend money to solve in your experience?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the first word that comes to my mind is urgency, right? So I call it like a crossroads, right? The point where, so if we were to use your weather analogy, right? I don't like the weather. I hate the weather. You know, the winters in Rochester really sucks, right? But it's there. I complain about it. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not moving. I've got everything's rooted here. My kids are still in high school. Like I'm not going to move.
Right.
So no impetus to make a change, to seek a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
But what if, you know, a year from now, right, I develop a health problem that really impacts me, and the weather has a big influence on that. Like it really is creating a big detriment to my life, and moving somewhere warmer or more or drier or whatever would create a much better quality of life for me. Now you're at a crossroads where if I don't do something, my life is going to be awful. It's really, I'm not going to be who I need to be. I'm going to be in pain, right? If I don't do anything, my life stinks, right? If I do something, my life improves, right? So that crossroads is, you know, this understanding of I've got to do something about it. There's real urgency at that point on the journey of experiencing a problem. So that's how I would explain the difference with, you know, that analogy of weather and just a common problem, right? A common complaint in my business. I'm not reaching the right people. I don't know really who, you know, I want to target. But I'm still getting referrals. Like people kind of mostly understand what I do, you know, versus I'm not attracting anyone in my business. I recognize the problem is my messaging, right? I have an understanding of what the problem is. If I don't do anything, I'm going to have to get a job, right? Yeah. If I do something, I might be able to salvage this, you know, before my partner says, listen, we need to talk. Yeah. Right.
I want to dig a little bit more into clarity, and then I want to get really into this amazing container of collaboration that you're building. But talk to us about the clarity coaching part of your work, why that's important, what that does for people, a little before and after snapshot of kind of the typical client.
Yeah. So I love to use the analogy of this, you know, kind of clarity pyramid. And at the bottom, you have foundational clarity, right? And that's things like clarity on your niche, clarity on the journey that the people you want to help are on, the problem that you help solve, right? What that urgency point is, how to talk about it, differentiation, right? Your values, what you believe about why this is important, or what you believe about what the experience of the problem is. Those are these foundational clarity points. And above that sits the strategic clarity kind of bucket. Mm-hmm. And above that is execution clarity. So to be able to move up and to really move forward in your business, you've got to have foundational clarity before you can move into strategic clarity. Because if you move into strategic clarity, so you start working with a marketing strategist, you start working with a sales strategist, right? Somebody to really develop a structure around your business and how to get there, you're going to end up spending a lot of money, potentially going down a lot of rabbit holes because you don't have the foundation to pull from to actually create that strategy. And what so many entrepreneurs end up doing, it is wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of money, getting really frustrated with a strategy that's just not aligned to them because they're hoping the strategist is also going to get them that foundational clarity. And that's not their job, right? And that works in that next level up too. If you're trying to execute and it's not working, you don't know if it's because the strategy doesn't work, or you don't know if it's because your foundation's not solid, right? And you're going to, and if you're hiring somebody to help you, say, with your social media execution, you know, if you think that they're going to provide a strategy for you, you're wrong. right? They're going to go off of what you give them.
1,000%.
And if you don't have a strategy, and if you don't have the foundational clarity that feeds that strategy, you're going to be lost, and you're going to be really frustrated in them. You're going to be frustrated in where it's going. So it really builds on it. And so it's crucial for entrepreneurs to have a really sound foundational base in that clarity, in that foundational clarity area.
And then it just amplifies and magnifies the impact of everything else.
Absolutely.
Hey, super quick station break question. Have you seen our free executive briefing on elevating your CEO brand? Check it out right now at doitmarketing.com/webinar. And now back to the show. I want to take you to a conference in 2005. It was a 3-day conference. It was at the Times Center in New York City, beautiful big stage, glass atrium, looking out on this Garden of Eden type of little, courtyard garden, a whole bunch of different speakers. And I remember one line from that entire 3-day conference. And the one line was, "You're not building a business. You're building a container for collaboration." And I wrote this down.
That.
I know you love it. Of course you love it, because now we're jumping right into your wheelhouse. But I wrote this down. I wrote a lot of things, took a lot of notes. The one thing that is like circled, underlined, 7 arrows pointing to it is you're building a container for collaboration. And I've had various chapters and various projects in my business where that was the foremost driver of that initiative or program or service. And this is now your big, beautiful, major thing that you're working on. So talk to us, if you would, about the Collaborative Entrepreneurship Incubator.
Yeah, well, first, I want to just kind of address what you said. And I love that, he really framed entrepreneurship, framed a business as a container for collaboration. And I think that that's really the convergent point of where we are in this experience of entrepreneurship and the role that we play as an entrepreneur. I think that for so long, we've really been conditioned to understand the role of entrepreneurship in this rugged individualistic way, right? Sure, we're working alongside other entrepreneurs. We do some high-level collaboration. We optimize those relationships with each other. We leverage them, but we're doing very little collaborative entrepreneurship. And I think that there's a mindset shift that needs to happen for us collectively that says, my job as an entrepreneur isn't to build the whole business, to be independently running and providing the whole. I like to use the analogy of a puzzle, right? If an entity or a business or an initiative is a puzzle, right? We as entrepreneurs tend to think of my job as an entrepreneur, my role as an entrepreneur is to find or to fill in all of those pieces of the puzzle to make the whole. Like, that's my job, right? But the reality is that, I'm really amazing at this one puzzle piece. I might be pretty good at a few of the other puzzle pieces, but I'm really, really good at this one. And, if we change the perspective of our role as an entrepreneur and say, my job isn't to create the whole puzzle, right, on my own, my role is to be an amazing puzzle piece in there and to identify the people around me, right, that I can co-create with, that complement my gifts and my skills and share a vision with me, right, for what we want to build. We all play different roles, that we can actually create something that's much more sustainable, that has the ability to sustain, right, its growth, that has the ability to deliver in a much more impactful way because we're showing up in our unique gifts and strengths, and we're allowing others around us to do that. So it has a lot more resiliency. It has a lot more ability to create the impact and personal fulfillment that we desire for ourselves.
Yes, 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 and amen. And by the way, that word's going to come to you in about 90 seconds. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
When I hear this, I'm putting on my amateur ears because I deeply believe in what you're up to. I think it's super exciting. That's as the expert. I'm putting on my amateur ears, and maybe some of our listeners also are listening with these amateur ears, and they hear, oh, collaboration, collaborative network, puzzle piece. Melissa's talking about referrals. Melissa's talking about building a referral network, and it starts there and it stops there, and that's it. True, false, fill in the picture for us.
Incomplete. So, where we are, I think, as entrepreneurs right now, especially solo entrepreneurs, really early founders, consultants, coaches, right? It's a big space, right? Yeah. Freelancers. We're very familiar with what I call transactional collaboration. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like us on this podcast, this is a form of transactional collaboration. It's not a bad thing. It's a really good thing.
Sure.
Right. But it's this, the involvement of our businesses and our relationships is pretty minimal, right? If this podcast doesn't work out, the success of my business doesn't rely on the relationship that we have here.
Oh,
right?
Now hang on. I'm not sure about that statement.
I know. Well, in general terms, right?
This is pivotal, Melissa. This is critical to your future success.
It probably will. And of course, those transactional collaborations do have the potential to springboard you off, right? Of course they do. But but those transactional collaborations don't allow for the type of growth and freedom that come with deeper levels of co-creation, of collaboration. And so, you have at the top, these transactional levels of collaboration. So you have, a referral network, affiliate partnerships, podcasts, sharing each other's audiences. There are, mastermind groups, all of these things where
joint ventures, all of that. Yeah,
all of that. We're connecting in with each other, and actually a joint venture. And as you go deeper, right, into more co-creative levels of collaboration, you're actually creating offers together and creating businesses together. I mean, that's the really short of it. And so when you start to do that, you really begin to amplify and fill in the gaps on, you as the entrepreneur that has to try to do all of the things in your business, that whole puzzle piece, to connecting in with those who are synergistic to you, and together really have the capacity to create something much bigger than you could on your own. And there's a lot of potential there that we just have not tapped into, especially solo entrepreneurs.
And Melissa, am I right that this probably isn't for everyone? Because people that are really stuck and not willing to give up that transactional mindset, they're looking at something like this, and they come in not with a giver mentality, but with a taker mentality, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not.
I'm going to join Melissa's program. I'm going to join Melissa's community. I'm going to get referrals. I'm going to get connections. I'm going to get podcast guest spots. I'm going to get people to share out my webinars. And they don't think for a second about what do they have to give? How can they help? How can they serve? What can they offer to the other members of the community? That kind of person who has the taker mentality is probably not a fit for this, correct?
That's correct. And here's the truth. Even for those of us who really value a collaborative approach, right, who really believe that by connecting in with each other, we have greater potential for both individual and collective growth and impact, there's still a lot of resistance that we all feel around collaboration. I think the reality is that we're not very good at it. Even for those that have the belief that this is what I want to do, there's often a constrictive mentality that still comes with with entering into those kinds of relationships. There's a lot of trust issues. There's a lot of communication issues. There are still a lot of these like internal beliefs about being taken advantage of, not being able to trust people, even the other way around, not feeling certain of how they can contribute, right?
Yeah.
There are so many things that can get really sticky when it comes to collaborative entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a huge part of not just learning about what creates effective partnerships, right? To be able to unlock that greater potential for us as entrepreneurs, if we can shift our idea of the role that we play, and experiment with, how to be more effective collaborators. But it's to overcome some of those barriers that we face internally in approaching collaboration in general. So, for those that don't value collaboration, they're really not going to get very far in this community anyway, right?
Yes.
Sure, you can utilize it in that transactional way, and you can stay there, and that's fine. But there's a lot more available.
Well, so that perfect segue. Tell us what it is. How does it work? What's sort of the value prop of the incubator that will get people into these higher levels of collaboration?
Yeah. So for us, it's really building a container to experiment and to play with deeper levels of collaboration for individual and collective growth, stability, and impact. And where we've been, so we're planning on launching an incubator that consists of a community. We're building a partner matching algorithm that we're really excited about. We're going to be running very targeted experiments and studies around what's required to really effectively match aligned partnerships and the skills that are needed to really foster and build those partnerships and collaborative models that will support those partnerships as well. Right now, we're running Collaborative Entrepreneurship Labs, which are free events that we've just run our first 3, and they've been amazing. It's just been an incredible experience, a thought experiment around exploring collaborative entrepreneurship in a really safe space. So what happens is, we put 3 or 4 entrepreneurs randomly in a room together, into breakout rooms with their lab partners, and they're challenged to, with some education ahead of time, create an offer together and to create a business together in 30 minutes. And I am blown away at what our lab groups have come up with when the wheels, come off and the constraints, are there, when they don't have to worry about actually executing this together. And they obviously don't have deep relationships with each other, right? But the thought experiment of what's possible for me and my business when I can kind of let go of some of that stickiness and simply explore possibility. It's been really incredible. And the feedback that we've gotten is awesome. And they really just can't wait to take it the next step further. In fact, we've gotten, but yeah, so what's next?
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. Well, I want to bring up one plus and a potential minus, or a perceived minus, because I don't believe it's really a potential minus. In another chapter of my entrepreneurial journey, I connected with a go-to-market consultant, a web designer, a content expert, and we had multiple meetings and lunches and so forth. And the purpose of these meetings was to build out this concept of what we called at that time the super agency. So it's not an agency, but it's the super agency. It's one-stop shopping. You've got the go-to-market messaging, you build out the website, you build out the collateral, you build out the assets, you activate the sales channels. And instead of going to 4 different people who are not connected with the same mindset or the same foundation, you would come to the super agency and build out this sort of one-stop shopping. So that's very exciting to some people listening, I think, is put that into your world with 3 or 4 adjacent or logically connected service providers, and you can come up with your own version of whatever this super entity is. The challenge with that is when push came to shove, each one of these partners said, oh man, I'm having enough trouble selling a $10,000 website. Now I'm selling a $25,000 go-to-market package. The go-to-market guy said, I'm having enough trouble selling a $15,000 go-to-market strategy. Now I'm selling a $25,000. So talk about, where does 1 + 1 actually equal 5? And how do we get out of this scarcity mindset that, hey, I can't even find people who can afford me by myself. Now I'm selling these collaborative offers.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that you mentioned is, we can't put our heads in the sand and think that, magically, like, but putting 3 artists together, you're going to develop a sales team. One, there's a lot that we need to learn about how to effectively model and pull together partnerships that create the whole puzzle, right? There's certainly an amplification that happens, right? When, we pull together 3 or 4 of the big pieces of the puzzle, right? And now together, we look, okay, together, this makes our lives as a business much better, right? It amplifies the impact that we can have on our customers, right? We share a customer. This is going to create something that's much more useful and amazing for the people we want to serve. So if we've agreed on that, like, we get together, now we're looking at a puzzle and we're going, we have some missing pieces. Now, this is outside of that mindset of, I don't understand how the little pie, right, that I can see in my purview is now going to split with the 3 of us.
Yes.
Right? We're making assumptions, a lot of assumptions, when we come in like that, like, you're not selling. I can't, like you said, I can't even sell a $10,000 website. And now we're going to try to sell a $25,000 website and split it 3 ways. And no one has the skills to do that. I think that we have to be aware that there are still going to be gaps, right? In the most amazing partnerships, there's still going to be gaps. And you have to have faith that, that you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's bringing in another partner. Maybe it's, that you lack those marketing skills, and with AI, and the skills that you share together, you'll be able to come up with a GPT that is going to be able to pull that together for you. Maybe you need to hire a sales coach together. Right? There's, you're not going to magically, I don't think, by forming a partnership, fill in every single piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mindset work that we need to do collectively to understand, I think, the impact that we can have when we co-create together. Now, if you were, as a business coach, to come to me and say, Melissa, I agree 100%. So how are you going to sell this thing? I think that's interesting. I think that we're at this point where we deeply desire to build together, right? Not continue to just do this on our own. Some of us, I think a lot of us actually, have a deep desire to do that, but really don't know how and don't see how it's possible. So I think it's going to be quite an experiment for us. And we're really building it as a safe container to explore collaboration and date, right? So, again, good partnerships are built on deep relationships.
Yeah.
And so the ability to do that, to be able to commit to those kinds of relationships, I need to be in alignment personally.
Yeah.
Right? I need to know what my puzzle piece looks like and what those, what the shape of my puzzle piece looks like. And think about foundational clarity, right? And think about what you really desire in a partnership. Why are you doing this? What do you really want to accomplish working with other people? So there's that clarity work that's involved. There's, a mindset shift that needs to take place, and time and experimentation with each other in a safe container. It says, I'm invested in this and so are you, and we're going to explore it together. But it doesn't have to be all or nothing and jumping straight into a big collaboration, right? We need space and time to play with deeper levels of collaboration without necessarily having to jump right in and commit to a big thing.
That is so, so critically important. And when I think back to my experience with that super agency crew, the whole concept of a safe space, a sandbox, a playground, if you will, these four people. So how do we get these four people together? My friend who runs the go-to-market consulting, he picked two folks. I picked two folks. We had a couple of meetings and a couple of lunches. Never did it occur to us that, these might not be the four people, right? It's like you want to get married on a first date. That was essentially getting married on a first date. There was no experimentation. There was no dating process. There was no, Sally's a much better fit for my particular expertise and my way of thinking than Bob. But I had those meetings with Bob, and now Bob's going to feel terrible because I'm not partnering with Bob. But you say, hey, we're building a sandbox. The kids can come on the playground and, one day there's 5 kids, the next day there's 7 kids, the next day there's 3 kids. Idea is meet all the kids and then have future play dates with the ones that you resonate with.
Right. And figure, and you said something that's really critical. Date the process and date the people.
Yes.
It's both of those things, right? So because we don't really know how to collaborate well. Forget about, the perfect people.
Yeah.
If you don't really, and we collectively don't, I don't, right? Yeah. We have so many tools available to us now to match the perfect people when we give it the right criteria, which we want to understand what the right criteria is for you to match with the perfect people, but also the models and the process to getting to the right types of collaborations for you and us, right?
Absolutely. I want to leave folks with one more mental model, and then I want to find out about all the different ways that people can access you and your brilliance. But the final idea that is sparking in my mind right now, we went to vacation in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're going around. There's long art galleries and shops and boutiques and so forth. And we walk into this huge warehouse kind of building, and there's art hanging all over this warehouse. And it's not really labeled, doesn't say art gallery. It's just this like weird, grungy kind of space that has this really amazing art in it. And this person comes out from behind the desk and says, "Oh, hi, hello. Are you familiar with our gallery?" And we're like, "No, it's our first time. We're visiting." The words that, again, these are words that are burned in my brain cells for years and years and years. She says, "Well, we're an artist-owned gallery." Blah, 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 blah. I didn't hear anything else that she said. I was like, oh my God, artist-owned gallery. How cool is that? We're not waiting to be picked. We're not waiting for some curator to put a stamp of approval. Like, you, Melissa, are allowed to exhibit in our gallery. I am giving you the golden ticket. These artists got together and they said, hey, here's the rent. Here's the utilities. Let's rent the gallery. You get this wing. You get this wing. There's 5 or 6 artists in there. It's an artist-owned gallery.
And there are some
around
people
for
doing
years
some
and years and
really
very successful.
Cool. Yeah. Really cool stuff.
So
it takes that creativity too, which a lot of us, it's very challenging to, I think for the vast majority of people don't have the creativity to go, hey, why don't we try this, right? There's so many unique, amazing ways that we can connect into each other to amplify our work, both individually and collectively.
Yeah.
It's just getting our hands dirty, getting in the sandbox and really allowing ourselves to play and explore with it.
Yes.
To get there.
So good. So good. As we're landing the plane, Melissa, what would you leave our folks with as far as the central concept, if they're to take one major idea about this new, deeper level of collaboration or anything else that we talked about? But what would be the core takeaway that you would love people to walk away with?
Yeah. What if we were never meant to do it alone? as entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship has never been more accessible. We've never had more tools. We've never had more coaches. I'm one of them, right? We've never had more resources and groups and communities and everything. And we're not doing better. In fact, success rates of entrepreneurship have dropped. It's not hard to understand why, right? I think that this overwhelming marketplace of ideas and initiatives and people and noise. And so, while that's not the problem directly that, I think collaborative entrepreneurship solves, what it does do is allow us to rethink the paradigm of what it means to engage in entrepreneurship. I think that entrepreneurship is ready for an evolution. I think it already is evolving, and that embracing those deeper levels of collaboration is that pathway to more sustainable, accessible entrepreneurship. And, I think there's nothing more disappointing and awful than someone who has that spark of entrepreneurship, who has a gift that's ready to be delivered to the world, who has to drop out because they really just can't make it work. And so I think, again, just saying, what if we were never meant to do it alone? What if you're not failing at this? You're just doing it alone.
So powerful. Well, tell people where can they get and go deeper with more Melissa Davis brilliance? What links shall we put in the show notes so people can take the next step?
So the first thing I would suggest is our free labs to really learn about collaborative entrepreneurship and to join, in an experiment and try out Collaborative Entrepreneur for yourself. I mean, it's 90 minutes of, you meeting your, new lab partners with no commitment, jumping in a room and exploring in a sandbox, right? So we can put a link in for that, but it's humanity.inc.world/lab. You can check out our website. Again, we're launching an incubator, likely going to be July, that we have a soft launch, September for more of a hard launch. But that's really that container for exploring and studying and connecting with each other in this container to really invest and dig in deeper for collaborative entrepreneurship. So we can send you the link for that as well.
Melissa Davis, you are such a rock star. We have to have you back and keep track of this amazing community of collaboration that you're building. Don't forget the little people on your way up to the top. And if you still have room in your calendar, let's definitely have you back in that September timeframe.
I'd love that.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.